Hi, I'm Kyle from How Do I Do That, and today Steve is going to be showing you how to skim a wall with plaster. We're going to be going through the basics. He's going to be talking you through everything that's involved with cleaning all your equipment. We're going to polybond the wall, we're going to skim it with 2 coats, and then we're going to do a polishing final finishing coat to sort it all out afterwards. He'll also show you how to put edging strips on the corners of the wall. We'll be looking at feathering the corners, feather into an existing wall where we've got some paint that seems the wall seems okay and we don't need to actually plaster that. And then subsequent videos we're going to be looking at how to paint fresh plaster. So that's one worth watching out for, because it's not just as easy as just throwing some paint on the plaster. It'll absorb it far too quick. And we'll also be sanding that wall back at the end. Steve's going to be showing me what to do. I've not done any skimming before, so it'll be an interesting one. We're doing this in a toilet, which has not been worked on for quite a while. There's been some bodged up plaster jobs underneath it. The paper was starting to peel and bubble, and the plaster was a mess underneath. So previously we've stripped off all that wallpaper using a steamer. We've got it all off. We've scraped all the rough bits off the plaster, and now we're going to start to skim over the top of that.
We've got these small walls with plaster. We've both stripped the wallpaper off. As you can see, somebody's had a little attempt at patching up in the past. What we're going to do today is we're going to put a nice thin layer on there and get it nice and smooth so that we can just paint it next time and we don't have to put wallpaper on, it's going to be painted. But when you're plastering, everything's all about preparation and obviously safety. So we strip the wallpaper off. What I'm going to do now is just feel it and just make sure that it's reasonably smooth, and any little bits of paper, just get them off. And then what we need to do then is polybond that wall. And what the polybond does is that allows the plaster to stick to the wall really well, and it seals the dry plaster. If you don't use polybond, or if you don't use the right mixture of polybond, when you put your plaster in, it'll dry very quickly, and you can't skim it nice and flat. It will just be a nightmare, and that's where a lot of people go wrong. They don't get the polybond on the wall at the right consistency. I've already mixed some polybond here. I've mixed it 5 parts water to 1 part polybond. So I'll start at the top. I need to put the ladder now, so I'll start at the top and I'll push the polybond on and put a really good coat on there to seal it all in. Obviously we've got some pipes at the top here which you can't see, but what we'll do is we'll plaster up to them, and we can use a very soft paintbrush just as the plaster's going on. Get it nice and smooth. So when you put that polybond on, we've got protective sheeting on the floor. The polybond dries clear, but we have got sheeting on the floor just to protect the floor, because once it's dry, it dries clean, you can't see where it is. So obviously you want to try and keep the place nice and tidy. So putting plenty on there, get it on nice and quick, plenty on. So, as you know, so I've got safety glasses on as well, because if you splash this, you don't want it in your eyes, because start causing you problems and you won't be able to finish your plastering off.
So do we need to get the plaster on while this is still wet, or can it dry first?
What you can do, just as it's going tacky, today it's quite warm, obviously it's quite humid today, so it should dry, it should go very tacky within about 15 to 20 minutes. But what we'll do is we'll polybond this wall. We've got a couple more walls around the side, and by the time we've done that, that'll start going tacky. I'll show you how to mix a plaster, the best way of mixing that, and then we can start to plaster it. So it's usually best when you're doing plastering to put the plaster on while the polybond is tacky.
Okay. Does it matter if it dries? Is that a problem? Do we need to go back over it?
It doesn't matter, and to be honest, I've plastered. I've done big rooms, and I've polybonded the day before and then plastered. You have to be a bit quicker. If it's dry on there, the polybond, you have to be quick to get your plaster on. So I would always recommend, for somebody like you who's just starting out, to maybe polybond it the day before if you like, and then as you come to plaster it, just put a diluted polybond on there, and it'll just make it tacky.
So how many parts polybond would we put to water if we diluted one?
If you dilute in there, just 5 to 1, 5 parts water to 1 part polybond, and that's usually fine. I mean, if you feel that now, it feels like it's quite sticky. But always make sure that you've got cracks there in the corner where the door needs to fail. Always make sure that you get plenty in there.
Okay.
I mean, it's quite stable this, but you can get like it's called string, and you can buy it, and it's like a bandage. And what you could normally do is put a piece of that onto the frame and onto there, and if there's any slight movement, it stops any cracking. This is not going to move because it's been here years, so that will fill nicely. But if you had a false ceiling in here, and you were polybonding the wall, and then and the ceiling, you put the strim onto the wall and then onto the ceiling, and then when you plaster the wall and the ceiling, it allows for slight movements.
Right, okay.
The movements is very, very slight, but it can cause.
So is that good in like a new build or something like that?
That's what you would use on new build, or if you were going to put a partition wall in, you know.
Right.
I'll just put some in that corner there. Plenty of polygon there, and what that's done there, that's sealed that, and it's allowed us to get our first coat of plaster. When we plaster this, we'll aim to put a 2mm coat of plaster all over it, and then again, just as that's going tacky, you'll carry on with that wall and the other wall. Once you put it on there, you'll start plastering that wall, and as you get around the corner there, this will start going off. It's very, very warm today, and as it's just going, as you can just about push your finger into it, and it's still tacky, then you put your second coat on, because you want your second coat to press into that first coat so that you get a good bond. If you leave it too long and the plaster goes off, your first coat goes off, then what you get is like an earth-set surface over your plaster. When you put your second coat on, it won't stick to it, and you'll end up having it separate. It can separate, and if you tap it, you can usually hear when it's separated.
So if that happens, say for whatever reason you run out of time, and you can
let it dry fully. Yeah, let it dry fully. Just say you're doing that, you know, you've gone right there and you get around to saying, oh, I forgot all about that, or somebody drags you off and it's not tacky to touch. No, not, you know, it's not soft, and it's gone. Leave it and polybond it, let it dry fully. It's got to dry fully though.
Okay.
It can't be that sort of colour. It's got to be a light, dry colour, and you might have to leave it 3 or 4 days. Yeah. That's a good point you just brought up there, Carl. You might have to leave it 3 or 4 days for it to go fully dry and then re-polybond it. If you polybond it straight away and then put the plaster on, the plaster will just slightly won't stick to it properly. Okay. And you won't get a decent surface.
And are you going straight to your second coat once you've polybonded, or are you having to start the process again because it's dried on? Or
once you've done your first coat and it's dried fully and you polybond it, let that go tacky, and then you can put your next coat on.
So you go for your second coat, and you're not starting to start the process again?
No, because it should be fairly smooth at that stage, you know. You might just, once you put your second coat on, have a bit more plaster and then just blend it in. I mean, this is a small job, this is quite small, but it's a good one to be showing you, you know, to plaster. Yeah, that's fine. What I'm going to do now, I'm just going to move around there and plaster them walls there. Polybond all them walls around the side there. So when you're applying polybond, if it looks like there's been paint on here, and you know you can just give it sort of one coat. But if it's on brand new plaster, I'd be tempted to maybe give it 2 coats just to really seal it. If you're going over somebody's plaster and you're not doing a particularly good job, right? And because it's so dry and porous, I'd give it 2 coats, right? Okay. Diluted 5 to 1, you know.
So just let that dry completely before you put your second coat on.
Yeah, that's right.
But if it's sort of an old wall like this where it's
been painted, it's been, you know, this is mainly sealed because it's been painted.
Yeah. And like the bad plastering and stuff like that is years old anyway.
That's
so.
Right. Okay. But you'll be surprised when we plastered this how really, and you come to paint it, how nice and new it'll look. Make the world of difference. Can you just pass me that float, Cal? Float, please. I'll just take this out off here. Any bits.
What's that called, you said?
Float. Plasterer's float.
Okay.
Some people call it a plasterer's float, some people call it a plasterer's trowel, but a trowel to me is a trowel that you use for a bit, but this to me is, you know, a plasterer's float. But depending on who you speak to, everybody has different names for it. Any flaky bits off. Because obviously if you start putting plaster on, you don't want them sitting up in the plaster and causing a bad finish on your plaster.
So the polybond does that just come as like a powder that you're mixing with the water?
No, polybond comes as a liquid.
Right.
You can buy it in 2.5 litre tubs or 5 litre tubs, and there are different grades. And I would recommend when you buy the polybond, you get the one that actually says on it for plaster for building. Okay. Because there's some polybonds out there, the cheaper ones, and they're not real for plastering. Right. And if you start using them, if you buy the cheap stuff, it's you can end up not getting a good job. Right, so now we're ready for mixing the plaster. Really, when you're mixing, it's essential that all your equipment's clean. My floats, my Horcum float, the heart that you put your plaster on, and my float, they're very, very clean. I've got this draper mixer. This is quite, it's a really, really good tool. I've used this quite a lot. If we were doing professional plastering all the time, I'd buy a DeWalt one or something a little bit bigger, but this, I've done many, many jobs with this. I've had it about 2-3 years and it's been really, really good. When you're mixing plaster, health and safety obviously, you don't want to be breathing that dust in, because once the dust goes into your body, goes into your lungs, it stays in there, it doesn't come back out.
Yeah.
So I would always wear a dust mask. This is a PPF2 style dust mask that prevents any dust from going into your lungs. And when you actually open the bag of plaster, you want to keep the dust down to a minimum so that it's not spreading around. If there's other people in the vicinity, you don't want them breathing it in.
Okay.
So when you're opening plaster, there is the top end to opening on, so you just gently standing up. You're always going to get a little bit of dust coming out of these bags because they're very, very poorly designed. But what I tend to do is very, very gently, just very gently open it like that. You always get a bit of plaster on in the bag, but tip it back into the bag like that, and then gently, nice and tidy, just open the bag like that. Don't leave any bits of tape on the top of the bag, because when you tip the plaster it goes off to one side and you can mess all of your shoes all over the floor. So just gently tip it off like that. Stop that one.
So if you don't use the whole bag, can we just sort of fold that over?
We can fold that over. That's a good question. That's one of the reasons for being very, very gentle when you're opening the bag. You know, so that if you use half the bag, you can fold all that back over nice and tidy. You've not ripped it down here.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, if you've ripped it halfway down the bag and you put it in your shed, within a couple of weeks it's going to go off.
Yeah.
So if you're nice and gentle when you take the top off, tip any excess plaster back in. It's worth mentioning that I put barrier cream on my hands.
Okay.
Because obviously if I've got thick gloves and I can't open that bag of plaster, the barrier cream will protect my hands.
Yeah.
And then when I've finished plastering, I do wash my hands quite regularly while I'm plastering. So what I've done there, we've got some really nice clean water. So we'll add some water to our bucket. Now we're only doing a small panel. The first panel is about 1.5 metres square.
Okay.
So I'm going to mix just enough plaster for that.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll just tip some plaster in there, just with an extension lever. Just tip a bit of plaster in for what I know how much we need to mix. So I'll just tip some in. So I've just got some plaster in there, as you can see.
How do we sort of know how much we're mixing with the...
Usually it's through experience. It doesn't tell you. I don't think it tells you on the bag the ratio, because it depends on the application.
Okay.
If you want to mix it quite stiff and you're having it quite thick, you know, if you're padding out, you'll go quite thick with it. But we want to go on quite thin on that wall. So it all depends on the application. It's usually when you put your water in there. I mean, I put about that much water in. I'm trying to match it up with a plaster.
Okay.
So it's sort of
So it's sort of like just over an inch of water. That's what.
I've just put over an inch of water in there, and I've just come above. I can show you. I've just come above with a plaster. You see? Can you see there?
Yeah.
So it's about it's a similar amount.
Yeah.
So I'll mix that now. So we've got power now. So when you're mixing, the other good tip for you is when you mix, put your feet either side of the bucket, because if you don't, your tub's going to spin off, because we're only mixing a small quantity of plaster, and this mix is very, very strong.
Okay.
So feet against the side of the bucket, and that there, you can see, that's a real, real sloppy sort of consistency. That's not ready yet. We'll need to put a bit more plaster in there. So what I'm going to do is just that out for a minute. Tip a little bit more plaster in there.
So it's a case of we could just keep adding a bit more until we get...
Yeah, until you get the right consistency, yeah. And the consistency you're looking for is like whipped cream. If you whip double cream up,
yeah,
and you whip it up and you get it to a good consistency, usually when you scoop it out like that, it won't just drop off.
yeah, okay.
Problem a lot of people do when they're plastering is they make it all too sloppy, and then they get the plaster on the floor and they start doing it so it's dropping all over the floor.
Right.
good plasterers don't tend to drop any on the floor when they finish. There might be the odd little bit, but usually when they finish it's nice and clean, you know. Put a little bit more in there. I'm not going to scoop it out with my hands. It would be easy just to grab an handful and put it in. The reason I'm not doing that is I have got barrier cream on, but it'll dry your hands out too quickly. So if you can avoid grabbing it, if you can hold that one down, put a little bit more in. Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, does she want me?
No, she's just said they're going.
Oh, right.
Just with a lot of
So we mixed that there, that's perfect consistency, but what we've done, when I've been having the plaster and we've been mixing it, it's been throwing dry plaster onto the side of the tub, so we need to get that off, back into the plaster and give it one final mix, because if we just try to use that as it is, we'll have big lumps all over the wall. So I'll just get a trowel and I'll just scoop that back in.
I'm just going to ask that electrician.
So I've got a large trowel here. I'm just going to clean the sides of the tub of the plaster into the middle of the mix. And this will get any dry bits that have been thrown to the outside while the drill's been mixing the plaster, while the paddle's been mixing it. This will throw the plaster back into the middle of the mix, and then I'll give it one final mix. Consistency there, as you can see, that consistency there is very, very good. It won't drop off my trowel, you know, and it is a bit like double cream. It's quite good. That's ideal. And what I tend to do is I leave it a good 2 or 3 minutes just to let it get used to itself, all being mixed together, and for it to settle. And then I tend to use it. I don't use it straight away because it tends to be a little bit watery. It will just set in a little bit. And that's the best way to use it. As I mentioned before, that drill that I've got there, because I do quite a few plastering jobs, it's a bit more heavy duty. You can buy these small. These are very handy if you're only doing a small job and you're just doing a bit of patch up or doing a wall. You can buy these, and these will fit into your normal drill, into a cordless drill, or into a decent sized drill.
Will it take longer to do it with that then? Does that mix it? Or?
No. I mean that will mix it very, very quickly. I mean you can still do a really good mix with this. A little bit longer, but these are just a bit effective.
Okay.
If I was doing a really big wall, say 4 metres by 2.5 metres, I'd go for something like that because you can, with a bigger mixer, you can mix it quicker.
Yeah.
But if you're just doing a small room, you're just doing small walls like a kid's bedroom, something like that would do you, that'd be fine, and you can get these anywhere.
So that's going to allow you, I'm guessing, to do a larger quantity as well than if you mix at once as well?
Yeah. Okay. Normally, if you were mixing and you were doing big walls, you'd fill that tub to the top. You'd use 3/4 of a bag of plaster. But we're just doing little walls here because I'm just showing you the basics of the best way to plaster. And I say I'm trying to show you, maybe mistakes that I've made in the past that have caused me problems so that you don't make the same mistakes.
Yeah, great.
So when you finish mixing your plaster, plastering is all about keeping everything nice and clean. I can take my dust mask off now because we're not dealing with plaster at the moment, it's mixed. But when you're mixing, you want to keep everything clean, ready for next time you mix. So we've got a trowel here which I use to clean the inside of the tub and get the plaster that wasn't mixed into the mix. So I'm just going to clean that up with a sponge and a bit of water, because the problem you've got, when you come to do your next mix, if you've got any plaster on there that's gone off or that's going off, and then you mix your next one of plaster and you put that trowel inside that tub, it turns the full tub of plaster off very, very quickly. It doesn't happen straight away. it happens when you go to plaster your next wall and you start putting it on, you think it's coming off really quick this. Any plaster on that trowel will turn the plaster off. Likewise with your mixer. So what I'm going to do, I've got a full bucket of water here, I'm just going to gently push it down and just get the plaster off the panel. Just so that it's nice and clean. That's nice and clean there, there's no plaster on there. As you can see, I've got this big dust sheet. When you're using these big mixers, sometimes when you pull the drill out, it's always best to let the drill stop and keep the paddle in the plaster or the water, because you pull it up and it throws it all over your walls and all over the floor. Plaster can be a nightmare to get off tarmac and concrete once it's on there. Power washing it, it tends to leave a stain where it's been. So if you buy one of these black rubber mats, these are brilliant. I use these all the time. They're really good because any plaster, dry plaster, drops onto that, and anything that comes off your paddle drops onto it, and you can clean it. You know, you can do a really good job of cleaning it. And these cheap sheets that you can buy, these are like a plastic sheet. These are really good because again, any lumps of plaster on there, you can just peel them off and you can use them over and over again.
Yeah.